Welcome to our channel, Crime Loom, the place where true crime stories come alive. From daring jewel heists to mysterious legends, every video uncovers the secrets hidden in the shadows. Stay with us, because here, every crime tells a story. In every small town, there's always that one couple people admire, the ones who smile at neighbors, bring food to gatherings, and lend a hand whenever needed. In Springfield, that couple was Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane. He was charming and dependable. She was sweet and devoted. Together they seemed perfect. But what no one knew was that behind the closed doors of their apartment, a chilling secret was growing. One by one, young women began to disappear. At first, no one suspected them. Why would they? Ryan and Melissa were the couple everyone trusted. But as the truth slowly came to light, the mask of love and perfection shattered, revealing a partnership built not on kindness, but on control, obsession, and murder. This is the shocking true story of the killer couple that fooled their town and horrified all of America. In the quiet suburbs of Springfield, neighbors often said they lived in the safest place in the country. The streets were clean, children rode their bikes in the evenings, and families gathered at the local diner on weekends. Everyone knew everyone, or at least believed they did. It was a place where people trusted each other, where doors were left unlocked and strangers waved when they passed by. But beneath that calm surface, a story was unfolding that would one day shock the entire nation. At the center of it were two people, Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane. To anyone who looked at them, they seemed like the perfect couple. Ryan was tall, charming, and always wore a smile. He worked at the local repair shop, helping neighbors fix their cars and never charging too much. Melissa, with her long brown hair and soft voice, babysat for families and volunteered at the community church. Together, they looked like a pair from a magazine cover, young, in love, and building a future. People admired them. "They're the kind of couple you want your kids to look up to," one neighbor said. When they walked into the grocery store holding hands, older couples smiled, remembering their own youth. When Melissa brought cookies to school events, parents thanked her warmly. Ryan often offered rides to co-workers when their cars broke down. They seemed helpful, kind, and reliable. But the truth was darker than anyone could imagine. Behind closed doors, Ryan and Melissa were not the happy couple people believed them to be. Their relationship was built on secrets, lies, and an appetite for control. Ryan had a temper that few ever saw, and Melissa had a loyalty to him that crossed into obsession. Together, they created a bond that wasn't about love. It was about power. The first signs of trouble began quietly. A young woman named Claire Simmons went missing one Friday evening after leaving her shift at the diner. She was last seen walking toward her car in the parking lot. Her co-workers assumed she got a ride home, but when she never showed up, her family called the police. Flyers went up around town, and volunteers searched the woods nearby. Ryan and Melissa were even among the volunteers, their faces sympathetic as they handed out water bottles to tired searchers. But Claire was never found. Weeks later, another woman disappeared. Her name was Heather, a college student who lived just outside of Springfield. She had gone to the grocery store late at night and never returned. Again, the town was shaken. Again, Ryan and Melissa showed up to comfort neighbors, Melissa hugging crying mothers, Ryan speaking with police officers as if he truly cared. People trusted them even more because they were there. No one suspected that the very couple helping with the search knew more than anyone else. Ryan and Melissa's dark partnership had already begun long before these disappearances. They would sit in their car late at night, parked on the edge of empty roads, watching people come and go. Ryan enjoyed the thrill of control, of choosing who they would follow. Melissa didn't protest. She encouraged him, whispering words that fed his hunger for danger. It was a game for them, but one with deadly consequences. The town still carried on with its daily life, but fear began to creep in. Parents no longer let their daughters walk home alone. People installed locks on their doors and bought security lights. The once peaceful Springfield was changing. Still, no one thought to look at Ryan and Melissa. Why would they? The couple looked like everyone's favorite neighbors. Detective Laura Bennett was assigned to the case after the second disappearance. She was sharp, observant, and unwilling to settle for easy answers. She noticed small details others overlooked. In Claire's case, there were tire tracks near the diner parking lot, but they didn't match any of her family's cars. In Heather's case, her phone was found in a ditch, the screen shattered, but there were fingerprints smudged across it. The prints didn't match anyone in the system. Detective Bennett began to suspect that the disappearances weren't random. There was a pattern forming. Someone was targeting young women. Someone who knew the town well enough to avoid cameras, to vanish without leaving a trace. While she dug deeper, Ryan and Melissa continued their act. They smiled at neighbors, they attended community events, and they played their roles perfectly. At home, however, their conversations were darker. Ryan would pace the living room, replaying the moments of their crimes. Melissa would sit and listen, her eyes fixed on him with admiration, as though his cruelty only made her love him more. One evening, as rain poured down outside, Ryan turned to her and said, "No one suspects us. They never will." Melissa smiled and replied softly, "That's because we're perfect together." It was that loyalty, that twisted devotion, that made them so dangerous. Alone, Ryan might have been reckless. Alone, Melissa might have been harmless. But together they fueled each other, each crime pulling them deeper into darkness. The town remained unaware of the monster that lived among them. To the people of Springfield, Ryan and Melissa were the couple that everyone admired. But Detective Bennett was growing restless. She felt the unease in her gut, the kind that came when danger was close. She didn't have proof yet, but she was certain the killer or killers weren't far. One night, she looked at the board in her office. Photos of Claire, Heather, maps of the town, and timelines of their last movements. A single thought wouldn't leave her mind. This is someone close, someone they all trust. Outside, Ryan and Melissa drove through the rainy streets, their car headlights cutting through the darkness. Ryan gripped the steering wheel tightly, while Melissa leaned close, her voice calm and steady. "Who will it be next?" she asked. Ryan smirked. "Whoever we choose." The night swallowed them whole as the rain fell harder, and while the rest of Springfield slept peacefully, unaware of the truth, the killer couple that would shock America was already planning their next move. Detective Laura Bennett sat at her desk, staring at the board that was slowly filling with evidence. 2 missing women already, both young, both last seen late at night. Her instincts told her this was not a coincidence. She flipped through the files again and again, looking for something that tied them together. She circled the words late-night disappearance. She underlined no cameras, no witnesses. The silence around these cases was too neat. Whoever was responsible knew how to move in the shadows. Meanwhile, Springfield was changing. People were locking their doors earlier. Teenagers no longer wandered freely at night. Mothers held their children closer when walking to their cars. Yet, despite the fear, no one suspected Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane. To most, they were still the friendly couple. Next door, Ryan enjoyed the illusion. He smiled as he worked at the repair shop, handing keys to grateful customers. Melissa continued to babysit and attend community church meetings, her sweet demeanor hiding the dark truth. Behind those smiles was a secret life. Ryan and Melissa often drove through the town at night, scanning the streets, watching for someone vulnerable. To them, it was a twisted game, one that grew bolder with each success. It was on one of these drives that they spotted their next target. Her name was Lisa Monroe, a 21-year-old college student who worked evenings at the bookstore downtown. That night, rain streaked down the car windows as Ryan and Melissa watched Lisa lock up the store. She held her umbrella low, rushing to her car. "She's perfect," Ryan whispered, his eyes following her. Melissa smiled faintly, her voice calm. "Do it carefully. No mistakes." Lisa's car never left the parking lot. Her disappearance shook Springfield once more. Flyers went up across town, vigils were held, and the whispers of fear grew louder. "Something's happening here," neighbors said to one another. "Someone's taking our daughters." Detective Bennett felt the weight of it. 3 women gone, no trace, no body, no clear suspect. She spent nights poring over maps, marking the last known locations of each woman. All 3 spots were within a 10-mile radius. That meant the suspect lived close, maybe even in town. But how could someone so careful blend in so well? At the same time, Ryan and Melissa's bond only grew stronger. Their relationship thrived on secrecy. Ryan's cruelty fueled Melissa's devotion, and Melissa's encouragement fed Ryan's hunger. They spoke in whispers at home, planning their moves like chess players. Their apartment looked ordinary from the outside, but inside it was dark. The blinds were always shut, and the air smelled faintly of gasoline and metal. Ryan kept small trophies hidden away, items no one else noticed. A bracelet, a broken phone, a scarf. Melissa never asked questions about them. She only touched the objects lightly, as though they were proof of their shared power. But cracks began to form. One evening, Melissa overheard Ryan talking to himself, pacing the living room. "They don't matter. None of them matter. Only us." His voice was harsh, his hands clenched. Melissa smiled, but deep inside, a fear she never admitted began to grow. What if one day his anger turned on her? Detective Bennett, meanwhile, started to notice small things. During interviews with community members, she observed how Ryan and Melissa were always present, always offering help. She found it strange. Why are they always around? She thought. They had volunteered during the searches for both Claire and Heather, and now again for Lisa. On the surface, it made them look caring, but to Bennett it felt almost too perfect. She started to watch them quietly. She noted the times Ryan left the repair shop, the days Melissa babysat, the evenings when both their cars disappeared for hours. She had no proof yet, but her instincts pushed her to look closer. One night, after another long shift at the station, Bennett drove home past a quiet intersection. That was when she saw them. Ryan's car parked at the edge of the woods, headlights off. She slowed down, curious, but didn't stop. The next morning, she filed it away in her notes. Ryan noticed her too. The sharpness in her eyes, the way she asked questions, the way her car slowed down near his. He told Melissa that night, his voice colder than usual. "The detective's watching us," Melissa frowned. "Do you think she knows?" "Not yet," Ryan replied, smirking. "But if she keeps getting close, we'll deal with her too." Melissa said nothing. For the first time, a shadow of doubt flickered across her face. Days later, another strange event shook Springfield. A jogger found a blood-stained scarf deep in the woods outside town. Police rushed to the scene, taping off the area, searching for clues. The scarf matched the one Lisa Monroe was last seen wearing. For Detective Bennett, it was the first real lead. She walked the woods herself, studying the ground. Tire marks, faint but visible. She crouched down, running her hand along the damp earth. They were fresh, maybe only days old. Her heart raced. Someone had been here recently, and she was getting closer. Back in town, Ryan grew restless. The discovery of the scarf worried him. He snapped at Melissa, pacing the room. "They're too close. We have to be careful." Melissa, however, stayed calm. She touched his arm gently and whispered, "No one will ever believe it's us. We're the perfect couple." Ryan stared at her, his jaw tight. For a moment, he wondered if she truly believed that, or if she was just trying to calm him down. Either way, they had to be more careful. But Springfield was no longer the quiet, trusting town it had once been. Fear was spreading. And Detective. Bennett's eyes were narrowing on the couple everyone else admired. The game was shifting. Detective Laura Bennett sat at her desk late into the night, staring at the photos pinned to her investigation board. 3 young women were gone: Claire, Heather, and Lisa. Their smiles stared back at her from missing posters now weathered with rain. Bennett's gut told her that the cases were connected, but she needed more than instincts. She needed evidence. Her mind kept circling back to Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane. On paper, they were perfect. No criminal record, steady jobs, loved by neighbors. Yet every time Bennett reviewed the volunteer logs, there they were. Every search party, every community meeting, every candlelight vigil. To most, it proved they cared. To Bennett, it looked like they wanted to stay close to the investigation. She began to dig deeper into their backgrounds. Ryan had bounced between jobs before settling at the repair shop. He was good with cars, too good, almost obsessive about them. Melissa had been homeschooled for much of her childhood, raised in a strict household, and had few friends outside of Ryan. Together, their lives seemed to orbit one another, as if no one else mattered. While Bennett pushed forward, Springfield was unraveling. Parents no longer let their daughters walk home. Shops closed earlier. The once busy diner had empty booths at night. Fear crept into every corner of the town. But Ryan and Melissa walked through it all with smiles on their faces. Melissa carried casseroles to neighbors. Ryan waved at police officers as he drove by. Their mask was flawless, but cracks were starting to show. One evening, Melissa babysat for a local family. She tucked the children into bed, then wandered into the parents' bedroom. On the dresser sat a silver locket. She picked it up, her fingers tracing the chain. She slipped it into her pocket without hesitation. When the parents returned later, she was cheerful and polite, and they never noticed the missing jewelry. To Melissa, it was another trophy, a quiet thrill she didn't bother explaining. Ryan, meanwhile, grew more reckless. At the repair shop, he boasted to a coworker about how easy it was to make someone disappear. He laughed as though it were a joke, but the coworker felt uneasy and later mentioned it quietly to the police. The comment was passed along to Bennett, and her suspicion deepened. Then came the night that changed everything. A woman named Sarah Collins, a teacher at the local elementary school, left a late meeting and walked to her car. As she unlocked the door, she noticed another car parked a few spaces away. The headlights flickered, then went dark. She thought nothing of it at first, but as she drove away, she realized the car was following her. Fear prickled her skin. She turned down 3 different streets, but the car stayed behind. Panicked, she pulled into the police station parking lot. The car drove past slowly, then disappeared into the night. Sarah rushed inside, breathless, and reported what happened. Officers noted her description: an older sedan, dark in color, with a dent in the rear bumper. Detective Bennett's mind immediately went to Ryan Carter's car, a gray sedan with the same dent. The next day, Bennett visited the repair shop. She stood in front of Ryan, her eyes sharp, her voice calm. "Your car matches the description of a vehicle seen following a woman last night." Ryan smirked. "A lot of cars look the same, Detective. Mine's been parked here all night." Bennett studied him, noticing the confidence in his tone, the lack of fear in his eyes. He was calm, too calm. She knew liars when she saw them. Melissa appeared at the door of the shop, her smile polite, her eyes watchful. "Is there a problem?" she asked softly. Bennett turned to her. "Just routine questions." Melissa stepped closer to Ryan, slipping her arm through his. "Ryan wouldn't hurt anyone. He's always helping people. Everyone in this town knows that." Bennett nodded, but her suspicions grew stronger. She left the shop with a cold knot in her stomach. The couple's act was flawless, but she could feel the truth pressing against it, waiting to break free. That night, Bennett drove past their apartment. She parked across the street and waited. Hours. Passed, the windows dark, the street empty. Then, just after midnight, the door opened. Ryan and Melissa slipped out, dressed in dark clothes, moving quickly to their car. Bennett followed at a distance as they drove out of town, their headlights dimmed. They pulled onto an old country road, the kind with no streetlights and thick woods on either side. Bennett's heart raced as she tailed them. She kept her distance, but the road was empty, and Ryan's sharp eyes in the rearview mirror soon caught sight of her headlights. He slowed, then suddenly turned onto a dirt path. Bennett stopped at the intersection, her gut twisting. If she followed, she risked exposing herself. If she didn't, she might lose her only chance. She chose caution, writing down the location and returning in the morning with officers. By then, the dirt road showed fresh tire tracks, but nothing else. Whatever Ryan and Melissa had been doing, in the woods that night, they had covered their tracks well. Still, Bennett felt the noose tightening. The couple was growing careless. They were moving too often, leaving too many traces. Their confidence was making them sloppy, and sloppy criminals eventually got caught. Back at their apartment, Ryan confronted Melissa. "She followed us," he hissed. "That detective. She's watching." Melissa's expression didn't change. She sat calmly on the couch, folding laundry as though nothing was wrong. "Then we'll be smarter. She doesn't have proof. Until she does. We're untouchable." Ryan stared at her, his jaw clenched. Then he laughed softly. "Untouchable. I like that." But Detective Bennett knew better. She didn't have proof yet, but she had patience. And patience was something Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane were quickly running out of. The town still believed in the perfect couple. But Bennett could see the storm coming. And she knew, when the mask finally slipped, Springfield would never be the same again. Detective Laura Bennett was not the kind of investigator who gave up when answers seemed far away. Every detail mattered to her, every strange movement, every slip of the tongue. She had watched Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane long enough to know something about them did not fit. But suspicion wasn't enough. She needed proof. She reviewed the files again late into the night. 3 young women still missing, and now Sarah Collins with her story of being followed. All the evidence felt like pieces of a puzzle that were close to connecting. Bennett pulled out a map of Springfield and marked every location tied to the victims. The bookstore where Lisa worked, the diner where Claire had last been seen, the grocery store where Heather disappeared. Then she marked the woods where Ryan's car had been spotted. A clear circle began to form. Whoever was behind this lived inside that radius. Ryan and Melissa's apartment sat right in the center. The next day, Bennett returned to the repair shop. She walked slowly through the rows of cars, taking in the smell of oil and gasoline. Ryan stood at the back, wiping grease from his hands. His smile was easy, but his eyes were sharp. "Detective," he said smoothly, "checking in on me again?" "Just routine," Bennett replied, her voice calm. "Your car matches the description we got last week." Ryan chuckled. "You're still on that? I told you I was home all night. Melissa can confirm it." Bennett's eyes narrowed. Alibis built only on each other's words meant nothing. She studied him for a moment, then glanced around the shop. Tools hung neatly on the wall, but in the corner, her eyes caught something strange. A scarf, crumpled and dirty, stuffed into a box of rags. She didn't say anything, but her chest tightened. That evening, she filed for a warrant. It wasn't easy. The judge demanded more than suspicions and a dirty scarf. But Bennett was persistent. She argued that the couple's behavior, their proximity to each case, and Sarah's testimony all pointed toward something bigger. After hours of pushing, she got the approval. A team of officers joined her the next morning. They knocked on Ryan and Melissa's door, the warrant in hand. Melissa answered, her eyes wide but her voice calm. "What's going on?" Ryan stepped. Up behind her, his smile tight. "You can't just walk in here." Bennett held up the paper. "Yes, I can." The search began. Officers moved through each room, opening drawers, lifting rugs, pulling boxes from closets. At first, it looked like an ordinary apartment. Clean, organized, nothing unusual. Melissa sat on the couch with her arms crossed, Ryan pacing like a caged animal. Then one officer called out from the bedroom, "Detective, you need to see this." Inside the closet, behind a row of clothes, sat a locked trunk. The officer pried it open, and the room went silent. Inside were items that should not have been there: a silver bracelet, a torn phone case, a locket. Each object matched descriptions from the families of the missing women. Bennett's stomach turned. The trophies were real. Melissa's calm mask flickered for the first time. She leaned forward, her voice rising. "You don't understand! Those aren't ours!" Ryan snapped, his face red with fury. "You planted them here!" he shouted at the officers, but Bennett had seen it too many times before. Criminals always tried to deny when the walls closed in. She ordered the items to be collected and cataloged. Still, there was no body, no direct evidence tying the couple to the disappearances. The case was stronger now, but it wasn't unbreakable. Bennett knew they had to keep pushing. That night, Ryan was restless. He paced their apartment, his voice sharp. "She's trying to ruin us. That detective won't stop until she gets what she wants." Melissa sat silently, her hands folded in her lap. For the first time, doubt clouded her eyes. She had always believed in Ryan's control, his power, but now cracks were appearing. "Maybe we should stop," she whispered. Ryan froze, turning to her slowly. His voice was low and dangerous. "Stop? After everything we've done? There's no stopping now." Melissa lowered her gaze. Her loyalty was strong, but fear was creeping in. Meanwhile, Bennett studied the recovered items carefully. She matched them with missing persons reports. The bracelet belonged to Claire. The phone case matched Heather's model. The locket was Lisa's. It was enough to tighten the net, but still not enough for a conviction. She needed a witness. She needed one mistake. That mistake came sooner than anyone expected. A week later, a hunter walking through the woods outside. Springfield stumbled upon something buried shallow in the dirt. He called the police, and soon Bennett was on the scene. They unearthed pieces of fabric, bone, and personal items that belonged to Lisa Monroe. It was the first solid evidence of murder. The news spread like fire. Springfield was in shock. The friendly couple everyone trusted were now under a cloud of suspicion. Neighbors whispered in disbelief. "Ryan fixed my car last month. Melissa babysat my kids." The mask was crumbling, and fear was replaced with anger. Bennett moved quickly. She brought Ryan and Melissa in for questioning. They sat side by side in the interrogation room, Melissa pale and silent, Ryan leaning back with a smirk. "You think you've got us," Ryan said, his voice steady. "But you don't. You've got nothing." Bennett leaned across the table, her eyes locked on his. "We've got more than you think, and it's only a matter of time before we have everything." Melissa's eyes flickered. She looked down at her hands, then at Ryan, then back at Bennett. For the first time, she seemed unsure. Bennett saw it, the weakness, the crack in the armor. She pressed harder. "He's dragging you down with him, Melissa. Do you want to spend the rest of your life paying for his crimes?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "Don't listen to her," he snapped. But Bennett knew the game had changed. The perfect couple was no longer perfect. The walls were closing in, and sooner or later, one of them would break. The discovery of Lisa Monroe's remains shattered Springfield. For weeks, the community had held on to the hope that the missing women were alive somewhere, maybe taken but not gone forever. That hope ended when detectives carried away the evidence. From the woods, the locket, the bracelet, the bones, they told a story that no one wanted to hear. People whispered in grocery stores and gas stations. Parents kept their children closer than ever. The peaceful town now felt like a hunting ground, and the faces of Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane were burned into every conversation. Neighbors who once admired them now avoided their eyes. Some even admitted they had seen strange behavior in the past but ignored it. "I thought they were just private," one woman said. "Now I wonder what was happening behind those walls." Detective Laura Bennett felt the weight of progress, but also the weight of responsibility. Lisa's body tied the case together, but it wasn't enough to lock the couple away forever. Ryan and Melissa denied everything during questioning. Ryan leaned back in his chair, smirking at the accusations, while Melissa kept her head down, speaking only when forced. Bennett knew Melissa was the weaker link. She had seen it in the flicker of her eyes, the way her hands trembled, the hesitation in her voice. In every interrogation, Bennett pushed the same point. Ryan controlled everything, and Melissa was following his lead. "Melissa," Bennett said one night across the metal table, her voice calm but firm, "you don't have to go down with him. If you tell us the truth, you can save yourself." Melissa's lips parted, but before she could speak, Ryan slammed his fist on the table. "Don't say a word!" he barked, his voice filled with rage. Melissa flinched and shrank back into her chair, the moment lost. Back at home, the cracks grew wider. Ryan's confidence was slipping. He shouted more, paced the apartment like a storm, and drank late into the night. Melissa watched him with a mix of fear and devotion. She wanted to believe in their bond, but doubt whispered in the back of her mind. What if Detective Bennett was right? What if Ryan was dragging her into a darkness she could never escape? The media had picked up the story now. National outlets ran headlines: "The perfect couple with a dark secret," and "Springfield's nightmare." Reporters swarmed the streets, shoving microphones at neighbors. Everyone had an opinion. Some called Ryan and Melissa monsters. Others wondered if Melissa was a victim too. Either way, America was watching. Detective Bennett used the attention to her advantage. She called a press conference, standing in front of the cameras with a steady voice. "We have reason to believe these disappearances are connected. We are asking anyone with information about Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane to come forward." Tips poured in. Small details, odd stories, strange encounters. One woman remembered seeing Ryan's car parked near the grocery store the night Heather disappeared. Another said Melissa once gave her daughter a necklace that looked secondhand. A store clerk reported that Ryan bought large amounts of cleaning supplies late at night. None of it was enough on its own, but together, it painted a picture. Ryan grew paranoid. He noticed cars following him, people staring, police watching every move. He raged at Melissa, accusing her of not being careful enough, of making mistakes. Melissa sat in silence, her heart pounding with fear. The man she once adored now frightened her. One night, Ryan paced the living room, his face red, his hands clenched. "They're trying to turn you against me," he snapped. "That detective, the whole town, they want to break us apart." Melissa whispered, Maybe we should tell the truth." The words hung in the air like a knife. Ryan spun on her, his eyes blazing. "Don't you ever say that again," he growled. His voice shook with fury, but beneath it was something else, desperation. He knew their mask was slipping. Meanwhile, Bennett pressed harder. She visited Melissa's parents, hoping to find leverage. They admitted Melissa had always been quiet, easily influenced, desperate for love. Bennett left with a stronger sense that Melissa could be the one to break. The next week, Bennett arranged a separate interview. She convinced the prosecutor to allow her time with Melissa alone, without Ryan's shadow hovering nearby. Melissa sat nervously in the cold room, her fingers twisting in her lap. Bennett spoke gently, almost like a friend. "Melissa, I know you didn't start this. I know you wanted to belong to someone, but Ryan isn't saving you. He's destroying you. You have a chance to walk away, but only if you tell us the truth." Tears welled in Melissa's eyes. She looked toward the door as though expecting Ryan to burst in at any moment. "He'll kill me if I talk," she whispered. Bennett leaned closer. "He can't hurt you anymore if we put him away, but I need your help to do that." Melissa shook her head, trembling, torn between fear and loyalty. She said nothing more, and the opportunity slipped away again. Ryan's arrogance, however, was beginning to undo him. A week later, police executed another search of his car. This time, beneath the trunk lining, they found strands of hair and fibers that matched Lisa's clothing. It was the first physical link tying him to one of the victims. Ryan exploded when confronted. "You planted it! You're all liars!" he shouted as officers held him back. Melissa watched silently, her face pale. For the first time, she didn't defend him. Springfield erupted with the news. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Justice for Claire, Heather, and Lisa." Reporters camped outside the jail, hungry for updates. The town that once trusted Ryan and Melissa now wanted their punishment. At night, alone in her cell, Melissa replayed Bennett's words. She thought of the missing women, of the trophies hidden in their home, of the fear in her own heart. Ryan's voice echoed in her head, harsh, demanding, controlling. And for the first time, she wondered if her loyalty had been a mistake, all along. The couple was finally being pulled apart. Ryan's mask of control was cracking, and Melissa's silence was beginning to fracture. Detective Bennett could feel it. The truth was close, but the question remained. When the moment came, would Melissa finally betray him? Or would she go down with the man she called her perfect match? The courthouse in Springfield was busier than it had ever been. Reporters filled the steps, cameras flashed, and crowds pressed against the barriers, desperate to see the couple whose names were now whispered across the country. Ryan Carter and Melissa Lane were no longer the perfect pair admired by neighbors. They were the killer couple, accused of crimes so chilling that people outside Springfield now feared them too. Inside, the trial was just beginning. Ryan walked in wearing a suit that barely hid his anger. His eyes darted across the room, sharp and cold. Melissa followed quietly, her shoulders hunched, her hands clasped together. She avoided looking at the crowd, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. Detective Laura Bennett sat at the front, watching every detail. She had worked for months to build this case, and now it was in the hands of the court. But she knew the fight wasn't over. Ryan was confident, too confident, and Melissa still hadn't spoken the full truth. The prosecution began by laying out the evidence. They presented the locket, the bracelet, the phone case, and the Polaroid photos taken from the couple's apartment. They showed the jury the fibers found in Ryan's car that matched Lisa Monroe's clothing. Piece by piece, they built the picture of a couple who lived a double life. Ryan leaned back in his chair, smirking as though the trial was a game. He whispered to his lawyer, sometimes even smiling at the jury. Melissa sat motionless, her eyes on the table. The bond that once made them look inseparable now seemed strained, a rope fraying at the edges. Witnesses were called. Neighbors spoke about how kind the couple seemed, how Melissa brought cookies, how Ryan offered help with cars. But their tone shifted as they remembered small things. Ryan's temper when he lost at cards, Melissa's cold stare when someone asked too many questions. Sarah Collins, the teacher who escaped being followed, stood in the witness box. Her voice shook as she described the car that trailed her through dark streets. She pointed directly at Ryan, saying she was certain it was his. The jury leaned forward, taking in every word. Ryan's smirk faded. Outside the courtroom, Springfield buzzed with every update. Headlines screamed across the country, "The lovers who killed together," and "America's new Bonnie and Clyde." talk shows debated whether Melissa was a victim or a villain. Some argued she was brainwashed, trapped under Ryan's control. Others insisted she was just as guilty, her silence proving her loyalty to murder. Inside the jail, the couple's relationship was crumbling. Ryan paced his cell, furious at the world, furious at the detective, furious at Melissa. "You keep your mouth shut," he barked during visitation. "Don't let them trick you." His voice was sharp, almost desperate. Melissa nodded, but her eyes betrayed her. The doubt had grown stronger. She replayed Bennett's words in her mind, the detective's promise that she didn't have to go down with him. Every night, she lay awake in her cell, staring at the ceiling, wondering what her life would be if she chose to tell the truth. Detective Bennett knew time was running out. She met with the prosecutor, urging them to push Melissa harder. "She's cracking," Bennett said. "We need her testimony. She's the key to breaking him." The next day, Melissa was called to the stand. The courtroom went silent as she walked to the witness box, her hands shaking. Ryan glared at her, his jaw tight, his eyes like knives. For a moment, it seemed she would say nothing, that fear would silence her again. But then, her voice broke the stillness. "I was there," she whispered. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Melissa's words spilled out slowly, trembling at first, but growing stronger. She spoke about the nights in the car, the trophies Ryan kept, the fear she felt when he grew angry. She admitted she had never stopped him, that she had stayed by his side because she thought she had no choice. Ryan exploded. He slammed his fists on the table, shouting, "Liar! She's lying!" Officers rushed to hold him down as the judge banged the gavel. The jury watched in shock, Ryan's mask of control finally shattering in public. Melissa wept on the stand. "I should have stopped him," she cried. "But I didn't, and now those girls are gone." Detective Bennett sat still, her heart racing. This was the break she had been waiting for. Melissa's testimony tied Ryan directly to the crimes. For the first time, the jury saw the couple not as a team, but as a man consumed by violence and a woman trapped in fear. The defense scrambled to recover, painting Melissa as a liar trying to save herself. But the damage was done. Ryan's outburst had shown the jury his true nature, and Melissa's trembling words carried the weight of truth. When the day ended, the couple was led out separately. Ryan shouted insults, his face red with fury. Melissa walked quietly, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time, they weren't holding hands. That night, Springfield felt the shift. People gathered in homes, talking about what they had seen on television. Some felt pity for Melissa. Others demanded she be punished too. But no one doubted anymore that Ryan was guilty. In her office, Detective Bennett looked over the files one last time. She thought of the missing women, of their families, of the town that would never be the same. She knew the trial wasn't over, but the hardest part was done. The truth was finally out. Ryan Carter's empire of lies was collapsing, and Melissa Lane, once his shadow, was finally stepping out into the light. Not innocent, but no longer silent. The killer couple that had fooled America was now exposed, their perfect mask broken forever. The final days of the trial drew larger crowds than Springfield had ever seen. People lined up outside the courthouse at dawn, holding signs, whispering prayers, or simply waiting to witness the conclusion of a story that had gripped the nation. Camera crews filled the sidewalks, reporters spoke into microphones, and the name The Killer Couple was now on every news channel in America. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Ryan Carter sat at the defense table, his once confident smirk replaced with a cold glare. He wore the same suit he had worn at the beginning of the trial, but it hung loose on his frame now. His eyes burned with fury, directed not just at the jury or the prosecution, but at Melissa Lane, the woman who had once stood loyally by his side. Melissa sat separately, her hands folded, her eyes swollen from nights of crying. She had betrayed Ryan, and she knew it. But she also knew there was no going back. Her testimony had changed everything. For the first time, she had chosen to speak for herself, and now the weight of that choice pressed heavily on her shoulders. The prosecution gave their closing arguments first. They spoke of the three young women who never returned home: Claire, Simmons, Heather, and Lisa Monroe. They showed the jury the locket, the bracelet, the phone case, and the Polaroid photos. They reminded the jury of the hair and fibers found in Ryan's car. And finally, they replayed Melissa's testimony, her trembling voice admitting she had watched and done nothing while Ryan controlled everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," the prosecutor said firmly, "this is not a case of bad luck or coincidence. This is a case of cold, calculated murder carried out by a man who believed he was untouchable, and a woman who chose silence over saving lives. Together, they fooled a town, but they cannot fool you." Ryan's defense tried to turn the focus back on Melissa. They painted her as the true manipulator, claiming she had made Ryan into something he was not. They argued she lied to save herself, and that the trophies could have been planted. But their words rang hollow compared to the mountain of evidence, and Ryan's own angry outbursts throughout the trial. The judge gave final instructions, and the jury left to deliberate. Hours passed, the courthouse buzzing with anticipation. Reporters rushed outside to broadcast every rumor of movement. Families of the victims sat quietly in the gallery, clutching one another's hands. Detective Laura Bennett sat in the front row, her heart steady but heavy. She had worked for months for this moment, and now she waited like everyone else. Finally, after 2 long days, the jury returned. The courtroom went silent as the foreman stood. The judge asked for the verdict on the charge of first-degree murder for the death of Lisa Monroe. Guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder for the death of Claire Simmons. Guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder for the death of Heather. Guilty. The words echoed through the room, gasps, sobs, and cries filled the air. Ryan clenched his fists, his jaw tight, his eyes blazing with hate. Melissa broke down in tears, burying her face in her hands. The jury had spoken, and the perfect mask was gone forever. The judge delivered the sentence weeks later. Ryan Carter received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Melissa Lane, who had cooperated with the prosecution, received a lighter sentence, 40 years. The judge told her that her silence had cost lives, and though she eventually told the truth, she would still pay for her role. Outside the courthouse, the families of the victims wept as they spoke to reporters. "We can't bring our daughters back," one mother said, holding a framed photo of her child, "but at least now we have justice." Detective Bennett watched from a distance, her heart heavy but steady. She knew no sentence could erase the pain, but she also knew the town could finally begin to heal. Springfield had been scarred, but it had survived. In prison, Ryan's arrogance never faded. He walked with his head high, calling himself a victim of lies, blaming Melissa, blaming the police, blaming everyone but himself. But behind bars, his charm meant nothing. He was just another number in a place where control was taken away. Melissa struggled in prison too. She kept to herself, often sitting alone, staring at the walls. Some inmates whispered about her, others ignored her completely. She carried the weight of guilt every day, replaying the choices she had made, the nights she stayed silent when she could have spoken. The media moved on eventually, but the legend of the killer couple never truly disappeared. Documentaries were made, podcasts dissected their story, and true crime shows replayed the trial. Springfield became a name people remembered not for its safety, but for the darkness that had once lived within it. Detective Bennett stayed with the department, her reputation growing after the case. But in quiet moments, she still thought of the 3 young women, of the fear in their final hours, of the families left behind. She knew justice was served, but she also knew justice could never bring back what had been lost. For Springfield, the story remained a scar. The streets were never quite as trusting again. Neighbors still spoke of Ryan and Melissa in hushed tones, shaking their heads. They looked so normal, people said. They looked like us. And that was the part that chilled America the most. It wasn't just that Ryan and Melissa killed. It was that they had fooled everyone while doing it. They were not strangers, lurking in the dark. They were the smiling faces next door, the couple everyone admired. The perfect mask had broken, and beneath it lay a truth no one would forget. You've just seen another chilling story from the world of true crime, but there are many more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Subscribe to Crime Loom, and join us as we unravel more heists, mysteries, and untold legends. Don't miss what's coming next, because in the world of crime, the truth is always stranger than fiction.